With the summer transfer window well and truly underway, Manchester United have got Matheus Cunha tick. Brian Mbeumo is in process, and of course, I think the final piece of the puzzle is who do they add to the frontline trio to make a complete front three? Viktor Gyökeres, Viktor Osimhen. Which Viktor will it be? In this video, we're going to discuss the pros and cons of both players and essentially which player Manchester United could go for. Now, I know that the reality might turn out to be different, but let me know your thoughts down below, who you would prefer. Be sure to hit the like button, be sure to subscribe as well. Let's start with, of course, Viktor Osimhen. The Nigerian 26-year-old for me is a phenomenal striker, probably one of the best on the market this summer. On his loan spell to the Turkish team Galatasaray, he had 37 goals in 41 appearances, and he's just a complete number 9. Blistering pace, can stretch the back line, an aerial dominating threat. And I think that's what Manchester United could do with. Now, the biggest questions, of course, around Viktor Osimhen is probably around A, AFCON, when he departs for AFCON for Nigeria, and B, the wage thing. The wage situation is quite telling when you can't agree personal terms with Al Hilal, the Saudi Pro League team, because of your financial demands. However, I think that the argument for Viktor Osimhen is maybe bigger than the money situation. I think he didn't accept terms with Al Hilal because he probably wants to still play in Europe. And if I'm being honest, a player of his caliber and what he did with Napoli should not be going to Saudi or the Saudi Pro League so early in his career. Now, money talks, and of course, the money situation is completely different due to what the Saudi Pro League can offer. But I think it would be really sad if I saw Viktor Osimhen go to the Saudi Pro League. Now, that leaves a big question mark in terms of where his future lies. Is he going to return back to Galatasaray, who can actually meet some of his financial demands? Is he potentially going to end up in the Premier League? Napoli 100% are going to sell him. 100% Napoli are going to sell him, and he's going to part ways with Napoli. However, with saying that, his financial demands or the financial situation that maybe he wants does not support the wage structure that Manchester United are trying to build. However, from a player profile perspective, I think when you've got a striker who has great finishing, very lethal in front of goal, very clinical in front of goal, creates moments and opportunities for himself from his movement in the box. He's an aerial threat, something that Manchester United haven't had for a very long time, and he's fast. He can stretch the back line. When you've got Matheus Cunha and potentially Brian Mbeumo playing behind him, that is for me a perfect front three. However, you look on the other side, on the flip side, and you look at a player that has played in the system before. You look at a player that has a relationship with Ruben Amorim, a player that understands the way that the manager works, a player that can play with two behind him because he's comfortable with it in Viktor Gyökeres. Now, of course, this season in the league, he's had a phenomenal season for Sporting, and he's also had a phenomenal season for his country as well. However, in terms of what he offers quite differently to Viktor Osimhen, I'll say, they're quite similar in terms of running. One is more faster than the other, but his physical hold-up play, I think, is much better. And because of that, him playing with Mbeumo and Cunha behind him can offer more space to them to get in behind. Now, in particular, in terms of Gyökeres, he's relentless, getting forward, pressing, occupying the back line, forcing an error. He can do all of that. Physically, he's a nuisance. He can come out on top all the time, or more often than not, he'll come out on top in physical duels, whether it's using his strength, whether it's his ability to, shield the ball away from defenders with his hold-up play. He can do all of that in comparison to, Viktor Osimhen, who is more of a direct centre-forward. For me, they're two different types of centre forwards, and when I watch Viktor Osimhen, I feel like I'm watching a striker that would have absolutely killed it in the 2000s. That's what I watch. That's what I see. Sorry, when I see Viktor Osimhen, he can create stuff for himself. He's a nuisance in the box. He's a poacher. He causes problems for the centre backs. He's direct. He's explosive, getting forward, and most importantly, like I said, he's an aerial threat. Something that Manchester United haven't had for a long time. Now, in terms of valuation for the two, because that is probably the biggest part, I think both clubs are looking to sell these players. We know that Sporting have a gentleman's agreement with Viktor Gyökeres, and we know that the relationship with Napoli has severed between Viktor Osimhen and Napoli. So we know both clubs are looking to sell. The price tags are not really that far off. They're in and around the 60 million region, maybe slightly more if we're including add-ons. The wage demands probably slightly differ, and the optimism to play for the team, I think, slightly differs as well. Viktor Gyökeres is reported that he was prioritising Champions League teams, but now he's open to a move to Manchester United. And I feel like with Viktor Osimhen, there's not much talk around where he could possibly go, and maybe is that due to his salary demands. Now, like I said, Man United are building a front three. They're building, for me, it has to be a fluid front three, something that we can build off of for the next couple of seasons, something that can work together throughout the trio. And even if you're alternating and you're playing Ahmad in the 10, you're playing Bruno in the 10, for me, the striker has to be, the focal point. And when you've got Mbeumo potentially and Matheus Cunha behind you, who are both fast, who are both strong, who are both good with driving the ball, essentially, I think the striker's job is to occupy the back line and stretch the defense to open up some space for the two players, or maybe even other, for the midfielders, etc. Now, if I was to compare the two and try and visualize who could work more in Manchester United, taking into consideration everything, I think, when we talk about these two strikers, we have to take into consideration everything. We have to take into consideration the financial aspects of everything. We have to take into consideration, their injury record, their goal scoring record. We have to take into consideration, the fact that Viktor Gyökeres has experience playing under Ruben Amorim. We have to take into consideration the fact that, a lot of teams are pulling away from Viktor Osimhen because of his financial demands. Taking all of those things into consideration, and in terms of how expressive Manchester United are trying to play under Ruben Amorim, I think Viktor Gyökeres might actually be the better fit. Now, that's just my opinion, and I've said it many times again. Between Viktor Osimhen and Viktor Gyökeres, I'll be happy with both. But I don't see Viktor Osimhen being a likelihood to happen. Viktor Osimhen is not the kind of striker that gets involved in the build-up. And because of, Gyökeres' ability to run the channels, or, play back to goal and hold the ball up and stretch the back line if necessary, taking all of those stuff into consideration, I think Mbeumo and Cunha can play off of him a lot more better. Now, in transition, I think Gyökeres is, a threat. He's a demon in transition. And I don't know if Man United are going to be looking towards playing transitional football that much under Ruben Amorim. Now, for me, taking into all those factors, like I said, I think Viktor Gyökeres is just slightly more likely to end up at Manchester United. But I'll be so honest, between the two of them, Manchester United are getting a great striker. Now, this is not saying that United are signing them. This is just me comparing the two. Now, Man United have been linked to other strikers in the market as well, including Mateta from Crystal Palace, who it looks like he's set to sign a new contract, and as a result of that, his transfer fee will potentially go up to around £50 million. And if I'm being honest, if you got 50 plus to spend on a striker, then I think you should go for one of the two best strikers in Europe this season. Viktor Osimhen has been one of the best nines. Gyökeres has been an amazing nine. And when I say one of the best nines, I'm talking about those who are available, because we could talk about Lewandowski, we could talk about Kane, we could talk about Isaac, but they're not available. So if we're talking about strikers who are available on the market, affordable, can improve the team, I think for me, either of them would be a positive for Manchester United. For me, it's just about whether Manchester United are looking to break the bank to sign a striker after they've brought in Matheus Cunha and they're en route to bring on Bryan Mbeumo, or are they looking for a more cheaper, safer option? Now, it's been reported that Ruben Amorim has demanded from the board that they sign the best quality players, not the cheaper alternatives. Whether or not, whether a player is more expensive because he's the better player, that United should go for that, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to help you build a team of longevity, a team that will maybe be able to compete, and that's what United need now. Between Gyökeres, Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha, or between Viktor Osimhen and Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha, that is either or a great front three. For me, it's just a matter of which one is your preference in terms of strikers. Now, I think, like I said, there's things that Viktor Osimhen edges it in comparison to Gyökeres, and vice versa. I'm thinking of the idea of Bryan Mbeumo and the fact that, he put in the most number of crosses last season into the box in the Premier League. Having a player like Viktor Osimhen as a target man would be better than Gyökeres. But if Manchester United are trying to play in possession and they're trying to have the striker involved in build-up, then maybe Viktor Gyökeres is the better option. But I'm very curious to see if Man United end up signing Viktor Gyökeres, where does Victor Osimhen go? Because it doesn't seem like there's a lot in the market for him right now, having turned down Al Hilal. And to be honest, I think the same could be said about Viktor Gyökeres. Let me know your thoughts down below. It's been reported after signing Bryan Mbeumo, or after finishing that deal, Manchester United will look to sign a striker. So Man United, the transfer window is just heating up, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. Be sure to hit the like button and be sure to subscribe as well if you're new here.